From the surface, this looks like just another quiet stretch of sea, but it is not. Ships are warned to stay clear of this area, not because the war is still being fought, but because what lies beneath it was never made safe. Down there is a World War II wreck that authorities deliberately left untouched. Not because it is fragile, but because opening it could make things far worse. Far worse than leaving it alone. Inside the ship, part of it remains sealed, still closed, still holding exactly what it carried when it went down. The war ended decades ago, so why is this place still off limits today? The ship was built for a war that demanded speed, volume, and constant movement. It was not designed to be remembered. It was designed to carry. Operated by a major wartime navy, the vessel entered service during the most intense years of the conflict. Its role was logistical, but critical, transporting material that could not afford delay. Cargo essential to ongoing operations, and dangerous even before the ship ever left port. Some of that cargo was stored deep within the ship, inside compartments never meant to be opened at sea. On board was a full wartime crew, men trained to move quickly, to follow orders, and to accept risk as part of the mission. They were not heading into a famous battle. They were moving through contested waters where danger was constant and often unseen. By the time the ship reached this stretch of sea, the war had entered a phase where margins were thin. Air attacks were frequent, naval mines were widespread, and the pressure to keep supply lines moving outweighed nearly every other concern. The incident itself was brief. Damage was severe enough to compromise the ship's integrity, but not enough to destroy it outright. A decision was made under extreme time pressure. Saving the vessel was no longer possible. Containing what it carried was no longer realistic. And no one could say what would happen if they tried. The crew abandoned ship. Some were rescued, others were not. The vessel slipped beneath the surface, carrying more than steel and machinery. It took with it cargo that was never offloaded, compartments that were never opened again, and risks that were never resolved. After the war, attention shifted elsewhere. Battles ended, front lines moved, priorities changed, but this loss was never fully cleared. The ship remained where it fell, not forgotten, but unfinished. And for decades, no one was willing to go down and finish it. The descent begins well outside the marked area. Even before the wreck appears, the boundary is already felt. Navigation charts change, coordinates tighten. Warnings remain in place long after the war that created them has faded from memory. The ROV moves slowly into the restricted zone. Light diminishes, sound drops away. The water feels heavier here, not physically, but in the way movement becomes deliberate, cautious. Nothing about the seabed suggests danger at first. Then the outline of the ship emerges. It lies where it fell, settled but not broken. The hull is coated in marine growth, its sharp edges softened by decades underwater. Large sections remain upright, intact enough to recognize the vessel's original form. What stands out is not damage, but absence. There are no signs of salvage, no cut lines, no collapsed areas forced open by human hands. No evidence that anyone ever tried to finish what the war left behind. The ship has not been dismantled. It has not been emptied. It has simply been avoided. As the ROV passes along the hull, sealed openings come into view. Hatches still closed. Compartments still shut. Boundaries within boundaries. The wreck feels suspended in a decision made long ago. This is not a place shaped by erosion alone. It is shaped by restraint. The deeper the ROV moves, the clearer that choice becomes. Every intact section suggests the same conclusion. Someone looked at what lay inside and chose distance over intervention. The descent does not feel like exploration. It feels like approach. Approach to something that remains exactly where it was left, because leaving it alone was judged safer than trying to reach inside. And now, with the wreck fully in view, the question is no longer where it is. It is why no one has gone any closer since. Everything beyond this point has been left exactly as it was, because no one could guarantee what would happen next. As the ROV moves closer, the reason for the exclusion zone becomes clear. Not through destruction, but through what remains intact. One section of the ship stands out immediately, a sealed compartment, still closed, still pressurized, still exactly as it was when the vessel went down. This space was never opened, never cleared, never made safe. Inside, wartime ordnance remains where it was stored, bombs and munitions loaded for missions that never happened. They did not detonate, they were not recovered. They simply followed the ship to the seabed and stayed there. From the earliest post-war surveys, this compartment was identified as the central risk, not because it was unstable at the time, but because no one could say how long that stability would last. Time does not disarm explosives, it only changes them. Surrounding that sealed space are fuel tanks that were never emptied, heavy oils and chemicals trapped behind steel that has been thinning for decades. Corrosion has progressed unevenly, slow in some areas, advanced in others. Any attempt to access the compartment would require cutting through these tanks first. That is where the danger multiplies. The structure of the wreck has settled into a fragile balance. Internally, pressure is uneven. Compartments push against one another in ways that no longer follow the ship's original design. Opening a single section could shift stresses across the hull, triggering collapses that cannot be contained once they begin. If the structure fails, the sealed compartment could be disturbed. If the ordnance detonates, fuel tanks could rupture. If contamination is released, it would not remain confined to the wreck. There is no sequence of actions that guarantees control. This is why the decision was made early and never reversed. Intervention would not reduce the danger. It would introduce new variables that no one could manage. So the wreck was left as it was, marked, documented, and deliberately avoided. Away from the sealed compartment, in a quieter section of the ship, the ROV's lights catch something smaller. A personal object resting where it fell. Unremarkable, untouched. It does not explain the restriction. It does not justify the risk. It only confirms that this was once a working ship, carrying lives, not just hazards. This wreck is not off limits because it is unknown. It is off limits because crossing that boundary would mean accepting consequences no one can undo. Some dangers are not neutralized by time. They are contained only by restraint. The war that sent this ship to the bottom ended long ago. Borders were redrawn. Armies stood down. The world moved on. But not everything was resolved. Beneath this quiet stretch of sea, the wreck remains exactly where it was left. Not because it was forgotten, but because disturbing it would carry consequences no one can fully control. This is not a site preserved for history. It is not a destination. It is not an invitation to look closer. It exists as a decision, renewed silently year after year, still enforced, still respected. Some wrecks are marked by time, others are marked by restraint, and long after the war ended, this boundary still holds.